How do you pay homage to one of the greatest literature icons the world has ever seen? You could build several statues, you could read all the books the person ever wrote, and you can even name buildings and stuff after the person. But there's a much simpler option if that icon happens to be William Shakespeare. You can simply create a themed garden in his honor. Let's start with a quick history lesson that might be helpful for those not very familiar with the works of William Shakespeare. Shakespeare was an English playwright, poet, and actor, and he's widely thought of as quite simply the greatest English writer ever. Some call him England's national poet. And if literature enthusiasts thought of legendary writers the same way sports fans think of legendary athletes, then I guess we can call William Shakespeare the GOAT of English literature. For the uninitiated, that means greatest of all time. Now, Shakespeare was born in 1564 and he lived for 52 years before passing away in the early 17th century. While Shakespeare himself was obviously not immortal, much of his work is. Today, some of the greatest plays and dramas that we watch came from Shakespeare's genius. And you probably can't get through English literature classes in school without reading books like Macbeth, Romeo and Juliet, or The Merchant of Venice. And naturally, given his greatness and his enduring brilliance over the years, the world has honored Shakespeare in so many ways. But there's one tribute you probably haven't heard of. That's the fact that across the world, people pay tribute to Shakespeare by creating themed gardens where only plants mentioned in the works of Shakespeare are cultivated and grown. These gardens are called Shakespeare Gardens. Throughout his literary career, Shakespeare mentioned about 175 plants in his writing. And so the idea for a tribute Shakespeare Garden is one where only some or all of these 175 plants are grown. So where exactly are these gardens? First, let's answer the question of how many Shakespeare Gardens even exist. The answer is nobody knows. In theory, anybody can create a Shakespeare Garden of theirs simply by exclusively cultivating plants that were mentioned in Shakespeare's writing. So you could have a Shakespeare Garden in your backyard and I wouldn't know about it. I could have a Shakespeare Garden in my backyard and you wouldn't know about it. So in theory, nobody really knows how many Shakespeare Gardens there are. But having said that, as far as public record goes, there are at least 35 known major Shakespeare Gardens in the world. For starters, there's one built at New Place in England where Shakespeare once lived. But interestingly, majority of the known Shakespeare Gardens in existence today are not in England. They're actually 4,000 miles away in the United States, where there are at least 28 of them. The most popular location for a Shakespeare Garden in the US is the one in New York Central Park. Yes, there's a Shakespeare Garden there. But there's also one at the Folger Shakespeare Library, which is an independent research library on Capitol Hill in Washington. And this location is important because this library has the world's largest collection of the printed works of William Shakespeare. Now, away from popular locations like this, I found something really interesting when I was doing research for this video. It turns out that majority of the Shakespeare Gardens in the US are located within campuses of universities with large liberal arts departments. And it's probably got something to do with the fact that back in 1915, the Drama League of America recommended the construction of Shakespeare Gardens in the US as a way to commemorate the 300th anniversary of Shakespeare's death. And so the very first Shakespeare Garden created in the US was created on the campus of Northwestern University in Evanston, Illinois, shortly after that recommendation by the Drama League of America. And that one took 13 years to build. Now, my guess is this trend caught on, and now there are more than 10 US universities that have built their very own Shakespeare Gardens. So in total, like I said earlier, there are about 35 major Shakespeare Gardens in the world, and this is what the spread looks like around the world. The US has the most with 28 known gardens, and most of them are on university campuses or in public parks. There are 2 known Shakespeare Gardens in Europe, one in Germany and the other one in Austria, while there's also one each in Australia and New Zealand. And if you're ever in Johannesburg, South Africa, well, guess what? There's a Shakespeare Garden there as well. So if for some reason you ever feel the urge to pay tribute to one of the greatest literary icons in the history of mankind, you can do it by building a Shakespeare Garden. That's it for today. Subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this and come back next week for more. And of course, send this to any arts or literature nerds that you know. And also, if you want to build your very own Shakespeare Garden, there's a link in the description to help you do that. See you in the next one.